Oh, Encantada, one of the beautifully unique 6 Las Vegan provinces. Wheat fields, apple trees, and there's even a walled village within it called New Coulson. But did you know that despite what you think you may know about Encantada, there's actually even more you probably don't know? For example, you may know that PR, our Build Minister and Lord of Stonehaven Keep, often refers to the province as Stonehaven Keep too. But do you know the reason as to why? Back in the day, when Troy hadn't been the Las Vegas chief for as long, an MT named the province Stonehaven Keep too for a while, mostly to annoy Troy. And Troy would be asking an MT to change it back constantly, until she finally did later on. And this little scuffle would also turn out to Troy officially recognizing an MT's reign over the province. Because before the ducal concession, Encantada had always been planned to eventually integrate into Las Vegas City itself, which was an idea that had officially started back when Voitontas took power. Long ago, very long ago, and even longer ago than you're thinking, there was a little girl. Her name was Rose. She lived in a city like the Icarus City, which spewed out smoke and tainted the clear waters around it. Rose and her family were very poor, especially with only her father being able to work. So, one day, Rose and her family decided to move away to a new continent, where they would be able to start life anew properly and not have to suffer as much anymore. They would take a ship to Adramis, from their homeland of Cathalat, just like many others from the same region. But unfortunately, tragedy struck when lightning struck. In the middle of the night, while sailing, while everyone was sleeping silently on the ship, everyone woke up in unison when the lightning hit the ship. But Rose could not find her parents, and she was swept away with the people trying to escape the ship, and jumped off herself in the middle of the seas between Cathalat and Adramis, and the boat sank where it had been struck by lightning. Days and nights she was carried by the current, until she eventually ended up drifting in a river, and when she was close enough to the coast of said river, she would try and swim toward it. She succeeded, and ended up on a strange piece of land filled with beautiful apple trees and green grass. The grass was so soft to her, in fact, that she fell asleep almost immediately upon properly making her way upon the land. The next day, when she woke up and she could properly see the sights, a rose-colored apple fell on her head, and she yelled out, "Encantada!" This is how Encantada came to be populated by its first human, and named. This is also the origin of the Apple Festival in Encantada. It celebrates Rose's discovery of the province, and by extension, the people living in Encantada themselves. Now, Rose was on Encantada, but she was alone, without parents, without friends, without anyone, really. She managed to survive on nothing but apples for a few days, but eventually she got tired of wandering around and wanted to do something else than just being alone. A few more days and she became malnourished due to apples not being a great source of food. Some more and she wasn't able to wander much anymore. She knew that one more day and she would no longer be able to do anything. She would have survived the shipwreck for nothing. But luckily for Rose, creatures called the Evil wandered around the areas close to the Vedan Peninsula. The Evil were beings made out of dirt and plants, held together by some unknown magic. They found Rose while in her dire state, half collapsed, laying on the grass, and took her in. She would be the first refugee from Cathalat to make contact with the Evil, and it's possible that she claims the title of the first Las Vedan, even though the culture only officially started after the collapse of the Icarus City, due to her having been taught the principles of keeping the environment healthy and alive from them. Rose would live with the Evil for many years, and every now and then a stray refugee would turn up on Encantada. She would always talk them into joining their little tribe, as the evil could not communicate with the refugees because they had their own language. And they would live as one, the human population growing, while the evil population stayed the same. Rose would eventually grow old and pass away, surrounded by her tribe and having lived a fulfilling and successful life. For many years the tribe will live in peaceful harmony, growing and slowly expanding. But their years of peace would not last. The Gurtek horde was a massive horde, intent on conquering everything around it, and that included Encantada. The peaceful tribe should have stood no chance against the fighters riding on horseback, but Encantada had a trick up its sleeve, or multiple actually. The first one was that Encantada was forested, so the horses were surprisingly ineffective. And the second one was that the tribe was very difficult to be found due to the help of the evil. They made fake camps and successfully lured the Gurteki fighters into them each time they tried to attack and conquer the tribe. But unfortunately, the people of Gurtek were rather quick learners and learned to spot and ignore the fake camps and swept the forests for the tribe in order to subjugate them. And it worked. Some Encantadas were slaughtered, others kept as involuntary workers, and some were allowed to keep living in their camp because they pledged allegiance to Gurtek. The evil went into hiding during this time, and have only been rarely sighted in Encantada since. Fast forward a couple hundred years, and Las Vidas was ruled by Moxverse. Blake, the ruler of Gurtek at the time, decided to sell Encantada to Las Vidas. After so many years of being ruled by people who forgot about the existence of the province, Encantada turned out to be barely developed, to no one's surprise. The site where the original camp used to be had since been taken down, and the original location forgotten. Unfortunately, before proper plans could be made, the Great Split of Las Vidas happened, which threw the government into relative chaos for a while, which caused the underdeveloped province of Encantada to stay that way for just a little bit longer. A little after Moxverse abdicated, the Great Split happened. An empty took over the reins of the country for a few days, but then abdicated as well and left the country to Voithontas. This is the situation which Akash joined, the person who would come to hold Encantada and then subsequently lose it. Under Voithontas, the plan for Encantada was to urbanize and integrate it as a mostly government-oriented district. Plans were drawn up for massive manors, a government capital, and even a little harbor in the south. But to Akash, there were two details that didn't sit right with it. The fact that he had to return Encantada after a while, and also the fact that he had to tear down a massive dock that he was building, which raised concerns about ecological matters, and Akash not communicating with the rest of the government. This eventually caused a showdown between Voithontas and Akash, with Akash being talked down by an empty. He would give up Encantada to an empty, who would hold it temporarily, and Akash would be paid a sum of money. Akash defected over to San Sventissimo afterwards, and then went inactive. An empty would, under Voithontas, helped to draw up more plans for the province, which would eventually never be realized as Voithontas abdicated due to the severe stress of ruling. Some houses and farms were built in Encantada during this time, and also before Voithontas abdicated, but no major development happened. And then Troy came along, our current chief. He would not draw up any plans for Encantada, and throughout his early reign attempted relatively little to develop the province. Sometime after Troy taking power, an empty would rename Encantada to Stonehaven Keep II, annoying Troy, and eventually causing Troy to relinquish the special pre-integration status that had loomed over Encantada since it had been bought, causing an empty to become an official mayor instead of a province ruler. Nowadays, Encantada is finally being developed through concrete plans which are being drawn up and worked out by an empty. In preparation for the Apple Festival, for example, a town square is being planned, and there's also rumors for a manor and general urbanization. To that effect is the history of Encantada up until this point, and now you know much more about how much there is to this little province. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you liked this episode about Encantada. This is your Minister of Culture, Cool Dragonlord, and Viva Las Vidas!